Chris Arnold, was Sunday's loss, Alec Medford as well, was Sunday's loss to the Jaguars the reality check that the Cowboys needed as they get ready to take on a Philadelphia Eagle team, possibly, most likely, without Jalen Hurts on Saturday afternoon on Christmas Eve? Was Sunday's loss the reality check that America's team needed after losing to Jacksonville yesterday?
No, I'm not going to. No, I don't think so. And the reason I say that is if you were to phrase it like this was a lesson learned, they could pick some things up out of this loss. Yeah, I could say that. But a reality check, I think anybody that thought the Cowboys and majority of this team played last year, 12-5, the regular season, they know doesn't mean anything to them. It means, okay, where will you be positioned in the playoffs? They know nobody's going to respect them. We're talking about their fan base, their peers, nobody unless they win a playoff game or two. They've been knowing that. So as far as a reality check, no. And for those who are saying, well, they should have won the game. Yeah, they should have. The week before, they put together a hell of a drive and a defensive stop before that drive to overcome Houston. And they didn't play that great against the Colts, but they turned it on in the fourth quarter. And they didn't play that great against the Giants, but they won the game. I think what people have been comparing them to is the team that beat the Minnesota Vikings 40-3. If you think that's the team that's going to show up every damn week, then you need to wake up call. I'm talking about the fans out there, because that's not what this group is. This group, we don't know who they are until the playoffs come. I'm serious. Even against Philadelphia this Sunday or this Saturday, you won't know who they are. They could be Philadelphia, but you can't trust them. You don't know who the matchup's going to be in the playoffs. So as far as that question is concerned, no, it's not a reality check as far as I'm concerned, but for other people it might be.
I think it is, because you look at what happened last week. You had a Texans team that stayed in it throughout the entirety of the ball game, and you needed a 98-yard drive to win. You had a game against the Indianapolis Colts where, yes, you were up by 2 before ultimately dropping 33 on their head in the fourth quarter and blowing them out in that fourth quarter. But you also had a game, speaking of Green Bay, who's on Monday Night Football tonight, where you were up 28-14 on the road and looking like the team that you are finally going to exercise some demons against Green Bay and specifically Aaron Rodgers. And you allowed them to come back into the game, and you made Christian Watson a star throughout that game. So I thought that game was kind of the wake-up call and the reality check, like, hey, you can't play with your food and think that by the time you get to the end of the regular season that that's going to be a formula that you can just simply turn it on and turn it off when you want to and think you're going to win playoff games, because we're looking at a team that's going to play most likely all of their games on the road in the playoffs. And if they're able to lock down the 5th seed, they're going to take on the winner of the NFC South, who's going to be under 500. So this is a team, I thought that yesterday they got off to a 21-7 lead. This is a team offensively that looked like they were back to clicking on the kinds of cylinders that you thought, and you saw what Dak Prescott did was stellar in the first half especially. But Jacksonville let them know that this is not a team that cannot be taken lightly. And then what happened in the second half, they allowed the turnovers and everything else to really build and snowball. And I think they got a reality check that, hey, now that with 3 games left, we need to ensure, based on the way that we're capable of playing, because you talked about the 40-3 game that they had against Minnesota, that is what they are at their peak and at their best. Any measure of something close to that, not necessarily blowing teams out by 37 because that's not realistic, but anything close to that, this team can beat anybody between Philadelphia, San Francisco. They're good enough to beat anybody. But if you don't come to play with your A game through the entirety of 60 minutes, you can find yourself losing and possibly a first-round exit as well. How about you, Medford? Was that a reality check for the Cowboys yesterday losing to Jacksonville?
It was a reality check, and I mean, you talk about the morality part of the game and the mental part of it all the time, the immeasurable stuff, but I think you really noticed it, especially from the head coach. It seemed like the players, speaking yesterday, it's all business all the time, except for Trayvon. He sounded real upset yesterday, but Mike McCarthy sounded really upset after the loss at the podium. Mm-hmm. He's full energy, win, loss, tie, whatever it is. He was talking real low, real down, and someone asked, like, do you think the team overlooked the Jaguars? And he's like, I've been doing this for 29 years. No, we didn't do that. You know, like I've never heard him so drained before. And I think, especially with the head coach, when it starts getting to him, I think they went into the building today and said, maybe we need to start playing everyone like they're a 1 seed, you know?
That's an interesting observation there.
It is. It's an excellent observation. I'm going to say this again. Yesterday, we were doing the post-game show.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Dak Prescott is inconsistent because people say, oh, Dak's not any good. Dak's terrible. He's terrible. He's not terrible. He's inconsistent. In other words, he and I don't mean wildly inconsistent. I mean, when you think he's playing great, all of a sudden he'll have an average game or a bad game, and then people throw him away like he's terrible. As far as being a reality check, I'm going to say this again. I personally think that team knows that they haven't proven anything to anybody. You go 12-5 last year and you get blown out by San Francisco, a team that everybody knew was dangerous. And to me, the entire team hasn't been consistent except for that Minnesota game. You showed they've got the talent to do a 40-3. They're not going to do that every week. They can't. But at the same time, I think they know they haven't put together 4 great quarters. They haven't done it. They've done it. They did it that last 2 minutes against Houston. They were up 17 points against Jacksonville. In fact, that was the first time in Dak Prescott's entire career he had been 30-0 when the Cowboys were up 17 points or more until yesterday. And I could go all the way down the list. Here's what's so wild. They've only lost 2 games in 8 weeks. Both of those games were in overtime. But guess what? Neither of those games should have went to overtime because the Cowboys were winning. They were up by 14 against Green Bay, up by 17 against Jacksonville. Green Bay and Jacksonville aren't going anywhere this year. They're dangerous, but they're not going anywhere. So to me, they are who they are. They put together 4 quarters one time. The defense carried them the first month and a couple of games into the first part of the season. And then the offense have been playing stellar. They're having the complementary football going on. But again, I'm not fooled by them. I've never said this. I'm the same guy that said they're going to win 8 games, period. And all of a sudden they show some chemistry and some character. And I'm like, okay, they're showing me something that I didn't expect. I thought all they could do was 8 games. They've already won 10. They're in the playoffs now. They're automatically in because Washington lost to the Giants. With that being said, they still haven't proven anything. They could have won, to me, and I said this yesterday, the only way I would think, okay, this team's got something, was if they had won out from the Green Bay loss on, from Minnesota on, even if they were inconsistent, if they were won 8 games in a row, then I'd say, you know what, that's a dangerous team. But they didn't.
Yeah.
And it caught up to them.
And it's interesting, and both of the points yesterday you were talking about the injuries, which is something that's obviously concerning as this team continues to pile up the injuries. Good news on the Leighton Vander Esch front, though.
Yes, sir.
Not a neck injury. Looks like a little bit of a shoulder stinger that he's dealing with there. He looks like he's going to be okay. How many games he's going to miss by the time we get to the end of the regular season still remains to be seen. But obviously this team has had their fair share of injuries. They've got a cornerback room opposite of Trayvon Diggs that's hella suspect right now. And to Alex's point about Mike McCarthy and the way that he was speaking after yesterday's game, you know, as we start to think about it now, there was 3 games left in the year, and this is something you brought up before this, you know, the season started, you know, the idea of Mike McCarthy being on the hot seat. Now, I'm not necessarily, you know, willing to go there right now, but it is interesting as we get down close to the season, the pressure starting to mount a little bit. And again, in a vacuum, if you look at a team that's 10-4 that clinches a playoff spot the way that the Cowboys have, in a vacuum, you think, okay, with 3 games to go, all right, you're sitting pretty good there. You got a chance to possibly rest some guys over the next couple of weeks. But that's why you look at the anatomy of how a 10-4 record is built. And some of the ways that the Cowboys have gotten there throughout the course of the year is not the same as what you see from the Chiefs or the Bills, and obviously
or Cincinnati Bengals or the San Francisco 49ers, the Buffalo, teams that are dominant. The Cowboys are not dominant. They're inconsistent.
And there really isn't a dominant team per se. I know Philadelphia's got the record that they have, but they've had some suspect games. Hello, Indianapolis, the Texans, before they eventually pulled away from them. There's been some suspect games, even just this past Sunday, yesterday against Chicago.
But you know what? There are two dangerous teams. I would say San Francisco and Cincinnati are dangerous, and that's because both of them went to the playoffs last year, made some noise, and Cincinnati actually went all the way to the Super Bowl. Yeah, the Cowboys beat them in September, but I don't think the Cowboys could beat Cincinnati right now. And as for Mike McCarthy, to me, his job is only in danger if they lose in the playoffs in a terrible way.
Or if they lose in the first round again.
Oh, again.
But wild card weekend.
Where I was going with this was if they were to lose on a bizarre Aaron Rodgers type miracle pass by the other team's quarterback, where it's like, damn, the Cowboys played a great game and it was a fluky loss. Then he's safe because Stephen Jones still wants to run everything. It's only if they look bad, if they look unprepared, if they look inconsistent, if they have a lead like they had yesterday and give it up again, then he's gone. He's got to be gone because just like Jason Garrett, that's the standard. Jason Garrett, he knew his job was on the line his last season and he had to get out of the first round. Mike McCarthy, because nobody saw this coming, very few people thought the Cowboys would win the way they've been winning this year. I'm talking about being 10-4. Some people might have picked 10 victories, but not like this. They have been showing character and chemistry, and Mike McCarthy was not on the hot seat from the Dak. I said it back in October. Dak Prescott did everybody a favor, saved Mike McCarthy's job, because if he hadn't had that injury on his thumb, the jury would still be out. Everybody like, I don't care what they do this season. But the way they played without Dak Prescott and the way Dan Quinn had the defense playing, everybody's like, damn. And then Dak came back and they became the number one offense again instead of 27th on the Cooper Rush. It's like, well, damn, this team is pretty good. They might do something, but they've been inconsistent, so you can't trust them.